Have you ever wondered about executive presence? Like what it is or what it does? Well, how we perceive the executive presence of another, well, it influences our decisions and our actions every single day. It's that important. Think about it. We make purchases based on the personal presence and the persuasiveness of the salesperson. Managers with that strong personal presence, they're the ones who persuade the best people to come and work on their teams. And even job applicants, those who have that strong presence, well, they often beat out those candidates who are actually more technically qualified. When you have executive presence, you're more memorable and you stand out. But you stand out for the right reasons. That's why it's so important. Here's another reason. We are always assessing each other, and it's no different here in the virtual world. But the communication tactics that worked so well among us and our colleagues back in the conference rooms at the office, well, they don't always translate seamlessly to those Brady Bunch-style quadrants that we have here in our Zoom or our WebEx meetings. You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you're like way too close to the camera, or just a part of your face is on the screen. It's usually your nose or an eye or just your forehead because the camera angle is off. Or you don't know where to look. Or it feels kind of weird because you're working out of the home and you're not quite sure yet how to manage your professional brand, especially if your office that day happens to be in the kitchen or the bedroom. Or you just don't feel as connected to your colleagues or your team, or impactful as you normally would in your face-to-face interactions back at the office. Yes, we are still adjusting to working and connecting virtually. But at some point, this grace period that the corporate world has given us to figure things out, it's not going to last forever. And those who have mastered their virtual presence, they are going to be way ahead of the game. Because when you demonstrate executive presence, it comes across as confidence to others. And confidence equates to certainty in the minds of others. And people pay for that certainty. You're going to hear me say that phrase again and again in this video because it's that important. A Princeton study tells us that it takes 1/10 of a second to make a judgment of someone. Yep, and then we filter everything they say and do through that original impression. And keep in mind, that first impression isn't made when you're introduced to someone. That first impression is made the moment you become a blip on their radar, even if that radar is your laptop screen. So instead of resisting that fact, understand how to make it work for you rather than against you. I'm Meyer, and I'm an executive coach. I work with political candidates, news anchors, and corporate executives. And I am so excited to have you here today talking about virtual executive presence. And the fact that you're here today tells me so much about you. For example, I'm guessing that you're motivated, that you're driven, and that you have a desire to make a greater impact, not only on those around you, but on your career. And that impact, well, it looks different from person to person. It's not always a promotion or a new position. It may be to succeed at the job that you were hired to do, or improving your communication skills, or being seen as an expert in your field, or building a professional network to lean on and pay forward. Executive presence, that added gravitas, being intentional with how you show up, it can have a profound effect on the impact that you make, whether you're back at the office or here on a virtual meeting. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll share with you 10 simple yet highly effective strategies that will not only enhance your virtual executive presence, but it will raise your confidence level. You'll raise your level of professionalism, and more importantly, you'll learn how to leave a memorable and lasting impression. I'm often exposed to groups of rising stars in an organization that have been categorized as high potentials, and they are set aside for specialized coaching. I'm hired to enhance their executive presence, their confidence and speaking skills. But there are certain traits and attitudes that often emerge in that initial conversation with either the high potential or the executive or HR. Now, these traits and attitudes, these are obstacles that are getting in the way of the success that the high potentials are capable of. And I thought it would be interesting to share with you some of the most common traits and attitudes that I'm called on to provide coaching for. See if any of these hit home for you. Needs confidence. Knows his stuff, but he's not well liked. The guy just does not connect well with people. No presence. The substance is there, but she has no gravitas. Always looks a little nervous, with that deer in the headlights look, especially when she's called on in meetings. Comes on too strong, way too intense. He just needs to dial it back. Doesn't dress appropriately, just not what I would call polished. She rambles, and it detracts from any influence that she may have. Too technical. People just can't relate. Now let me ask you, which of these resonates with you most? Did you get a gut reaction to any of them? Have any of these attitudes or traits come up in performance reviews or in 360 assessments? If they did, don't dismay. I'm going to share some specific strategies that are going to help you come across as a mature and a confident leader. Whatever the comments are that I receive about high potentials, it basically comes down to this. The high potential or executive has hit a wall for a reason, and he or she has no idea what it is or how to fix it. Most people are aware, however, of the advantages that increased presence brings them. They understand that influencing across levels demands that personal presence. It's not the what that's the problem. It's the how that puzzles them and stops them in their tracks. Presence is not something that we're born with. Actually, presence consists of learned behaviors. And executive presence works right alongside your physical attributes, your natural talents, and your character traits. Here's another way to look at it. Low presence equals low impact. High presence equals high impact. Presence can help you to get a job, a promotion, a vote, a date, or a sale. Presence can help you to lead a meeting, a movement, a corporation, or a nation. Executive presence is that important, and it's even more so now that we are all spending more time engaging virtually. Here's the most common question that I'm asked. What is executive presence? It's the impact that you make on another by way of your manner or your appearance. Additionally, it's your ability to make someone feel seen, heard, and valued. Personal presence may be difficult to put your finger on, but we all know it when we see it. Someone walks into a room and heads turn. People step aside for them. Conversations open up to include them. When they speak, people listen or chime in. When they ask questions, people answer. When they lead, people follow. And when they leave, their absence is felt. That last one always gets me because it's so powerful. People with presence, they look more confident and comfortable. They speak clearly and persuasively. They're poised and they think clearly, even under pressure. They act and they move with intention. Who wouldn't want executive presence? The more important question is, how do you demonstrate that presence when you're not in a room, but on a computer screen? The 3 most important attributes for you to focus on the next time you're in a virtual conference are presence, connection, and projection. Now, as I go through these next slides, take note of the body language and the facial expressions that you see. Presence can be attributed to how you make someone feel by way of your manner and appearance. It's your energy, it's your attention, your body language, and your voice. Connection is the way that you build rapport with those who are on the video call. Look how she leans in and her expression. That expression is not an RBF. For those of you who don't know what an RBF is, it's a resting bitch face, and yes, it is a thing. Projection. It's your ability to show your best self and express yourself confidently. Again, take note at her body language and facial expressions. What is it about this woman's body language that is projecting that confidence? So while you're on this virtual meeting, check in with yourself and assess where you are right now with these three things: presence, connection, and projection. So now I'm going to dive into those 10 strategies that I referenced earlier. Now these strategies, they're going to boost your presence, your connection, and your projection, all of which will help you to make a more powerful impact on those around you, because life is too short to be mediocre. Number 1, before going into any virtual meeting, know the answer to these 3 questions. Question 1, what's important to the people in this meeting? Write down notes and have them in front of you. Knowing what you're going to say and in what order you're going to say it, it not only demonstrates your presence, but it gives your confidence a boost. I can't express enough how important this is. Too many people, they just show up and wing it. If your goal is to set yourself apart from all of the others, have an outline, have bullet points, or a full script. Know what you're going to say and in what order you're going to say it. Question 2, why should they be interested in you? Knowing how to promote yourself and to speak to your value is vitally important. Not only to you, but it's important to your team members and to your organization. Now we're going to come back to this gem just a little bit later in the program, but for right now, ask yourself, why should they be interested in you? What do you bring to the table? This goes beyond what's on your resume. Don't underestimate the value of your ideas or your professional connections or your courage or your soft skills. The last question that you need to know the answer to is, what relevant questions do you need to ask? Meetings give you an opportunity to build relationships and to provide the support that's needed to move those projects forward and to help others perform well. When you're invited to the virtual table, you're not taking up a square on the computer screen. No, you're there to provide value and insight and perspective. So what essential questions do you need to be asking to show that you're meaningfully engaged? Being prepared helps you to make that desired impression and that impact on those in those meetings. I never advise winging it, because we all know what happens when we throw anything up into the air that has wings. You never know which direction it's going to fly in. Number 2, demonstrate confidence. Confidence, or the perception of having confidence, can be a game changer. Why? Because confidence equates to certainty, and people pay for that certainty. But what if you're not feeling all that confident? We've all been there. We show up prepared, we have our notes, we've even practiced what we're going to say, and yet the idea of jumping on that virtual call in 2 minutes still has us feeling anxious and nervous. Don't worry, I've got you covered. I'd like to introduce you to the power pose. A power pose is a stance that you take before going into any make or break moments, such as meetings, job interviews, important calls. A power pose is, well, think either of Wonder Woman or Superman and how they stand. It's that kind of a stance. Standing tall, hands on your hips, your chest is out and your chin is up. Now let's be clear. You want to go into this pose before your important virtual meeting. You're not doing this while you're in the meeting. Now, a power pose makes you feel confident and self-assured. Now, the research on this comes out of Harvard by professor and researcher Amy Cuddy. Now, she had a great TED Talk on this, and if you Google it, that TED Talk, well, it's worth the watch. When you go into a power pose, it releases testosterone into your bloodstream, and it will make you feel more confident and more powerful. It increases your desire to take risks. It also reduces the cortisol in your bloodstream. Cortisol is that pesky hormone that gives us feelings of anxiety and stress. It also makes us hesitate instead of going forward. Going into a power pose is going to be one of the most effective ways to give you a boost of confidence in under 2 minutes, because you're literally playing chemist with your own brains. Now, what if you don't have 2 minutes? Go into a power pose, but this time, raise your arms up above your head, using the same kind of energy as if your team just won a game. It releases testosterone faster, so you're going to feel that confidence coming on faster. Just remember this: motion creates emotion. So if you're feeling nervous or defeated or anxious, change your body language and you will change your emotion. So do your power posing before your virtual meetings. They're game changers. Number 3, dress the part. If you're on an audio-only call, well, you have the liberty to leave your pajamas and your fuzzy slippers on. However, if you're on a video call, dressing professionally, and I would say in a way that is congruent with your company's culture, I'd say this is a must. It's common knowledge and backed by research that clothing has a strong influence over the way other people perceive us. Yes, you may be talented and qualified, but wearing shorts and a t-shirt to that virtual meeting probably won't communicate your ambition to your boss or any decision makers on that call. I recommend dressing as if you were meeting the other participants in person. Like it or not, your clothes and presentation communicate volumes about you as a professional. When you're putting on that shirt, consider what it says about you and the professional brand that you're wanting to communicate. Remember, for the most part, people will assume whatever it is that you project. So be intentional with what you're projecting. Now let's shift gears here and talk a little bit about your virtual setup, because I want to make sure that you look really good the next time you go into a virtual meeting. Going forward, I'm going to be sharing screenshots, and many of these are of local and cable television interviews. Now, it's to develop your awareness and to give you greater insight into what can add or detract from your virtual presence. Because these are screenshots of actual television interviews, you're going to see the captions from the news stations at the bottom. Just ignore them. I'm not making any political statements, and the screenshots come from a variety of competitive news sources. So ignore the captions, ignore the news stations that they came from. We're focusing on the virtual setup of these photos, the people, their backgrounds, and the overall impression that they make on the viewers. You're going to learn what works and what doesn't, because success leaves clues. Without further ado, let's take a dive into number 4, your camera setup. First things first, any camera that you use in your virtual meetings should be at or slightly above eye level. You can do this by putting something under your device, such as books, a box, a stool, whatever you need to hike that camera up so that it's placed at eye level. It doesn't matter if it's your desktop, laptop, GoPro, or smartphone. If the camera is too low, we are going to get a great look at your ceiling. And I've seen a lot of ceiling fans lately. You'll look like you have a few added chins, and we'll get a direct view right up your nose. You also don't want your camera too high, because at that angle you can come across as weak, vulnerable, or frightened, because the camera is actually looking down at you, and none of these are good things when you're wanting to make that powerful impression. Number 5, are you looking at the camera lens? One of the easiest ways to demonstrate confidence is through eye contact. This holds true for virtual meetings just as it does in your face-to-face meetings. Again, confidence equates to certainty, and people pay for certainty. So eye contact is important, but people aren't making the eye contact that they should be because they are looking in the wrong place in their virtual meetings. If you're looking at the screen, like I am now, you're looking in the wrong place and you're not making eye contact. Looking at the screen is a natural place to look because we gravitate towards looking at human faces. I mean, come on, we've been doing this since birth. But when you look at the screen in a virtual meeting, you break eye contact, and it creates a disconnect. Where you want to direct your gaze is at the camera, and that camera is going to be located in a different place depending on the device you're using. So know where it is. When you look at the camera, not the screen, it will appear that you have a steady gaze. It will appear that you're looking at them in the eye. While subtle, it will feel different, and it's a subtle shift to enhance your presence. I have clients who literally take Post-it notes, cut a hole in the center, and draw arrows on it that points to the camera, and then they take this Post-it note and they post it right over their camera, so they're reminded where to focus. So if you find that you keep looking at the screen, try this tactic and see if it works for you. Now let's move on to number 6. We're going to take a look at some lighting examples. And while we do this, take note of the impression that various lighting leaves on you in these virtual meetings. Whether you're dialing into a virtual meeting from home or from your office, set up your computer, laptop, smartphone, or camera in a well-lit room. This is a well-lit room, and I think it looks awesome. We can see him. We can see his backdrop. The backdrop is of a corner. There's nice art that we can see because the room is well lit. I'm not sure what that silver thing is at the left. Could be an urn, could be a martini shaker. I don't really know, but it's interesting, which in turn makes him more interesting. Again, great lighting. And it's in a kitchen. The kitchen is well lit and the kitchen is uncluttered. Nice cabinetry. Bottom line, we want to see you, we want to see your backdrop, which means you need some good lighting. You don't want your lighting to look like this, and this happens all the time. People will feel a greater connection to you when you and your backdrop are well lit. When you're looking for a place to perch your virtual meeting, natural lighting is great, particularly if the windows are in front of you. I have windows in front of me. But if you don't have natural lighting, I recommend using, can you see that? A ring light. A ring light. Ring lights are awesome and you can find them online. Not a fan of ring lights? No problem. After Zooming all day, even my eyes get strained. So go through your house or your apartment or your office and just pull a couple of lamps from other rooms. Better yet, buy a pair of desk lamps and put them behind whatever camera, laptop, or whatever it is that you're using. Meaning, make sure that your key light is in front of you so that we can illuminate your face. It's called key lighting. Quick tip, if you do decide to use 2 lamps, just make sure that the bulbs are the same in each lamp. Otherwise, you're going to get this weird coloring. It's a little thing, but it really makes a big difference. You can have lighting in the back, you can have lighting on the sides, but you still need that light in front of you. Otherwise, you're going to get these dark shadows on your face, and again, we won't be able to see you. For example, now this athlete may be going for the gold, but if he were going for a medal in lighting, I wouldn't give this guy a bronze. The windows are open in the back. He has no light in front of him, and the camera angle's too low. Do you see how these things can detract from your overall presence? Number 7, let's talk backdrop. This is a big one. Your backdrop is whatever the viewer sees behind you whenever you're on a virtual call. If you're going into a virtual meeting, you'll want your background to reflect your personal and professional brand because your environment is an extension of you. And your background, well, it's tied directly into the impression that you're leaving on others in those virtual meetings. So right now, wherever you are, and I mean like right now, turn around and take a look at your background. Go ahead, no one's looking, and I won't advance the slide so you can take a minute to assess your backdrop. What do you see? Is your background straightened up or is it cluttered? Do you have books, art, or awards on the wall? Or are there clothes laying around? Is your environment full of light, dimly lit, or is it dark? Do you see clean lines, or are doors, drawers, and cupboards open? Are we getting a good look at your ceiling, or can we see items of interest behind you? All of this can add or detract from the impression that you're wanting to make on others. Now here's a tip. If you're in a virtual meeting often, consider claiming a corner of the house or apartment that is devoted specifically for these meetings. And I don't use the word corner lightly. Corners look awesome in virtual meetings. So do plants. So do curtains. So do items of interest. Items of interest make you more interesting by association. Now that you're more aware of what a great backdrop and camera angle and lighting can do for your overall impression, I'm going to share 9 screenshots of virtual interviews with you. And as we go along, I'd like you to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being that it was a bad impression that was left on you. Not well lit, low camera angle, shoddy background, all the way up to 10 being well lit, interesting backdrop, good eye contact, professional and clean. Now this is a good exercise to increase your awareness of what works and what doesn't work. And note the overall impression that these people leave on you in these virtual interviews. Because remember, we size people up in 1/10 of a second. Now I'm going to give some commentary as we go through these slides together. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to rate them right along with you. So number 1, this is beautifully curated. Nice shapes. She has Emmys. I love the red. And there's a plant. I would definitely give this a 10. I love the wall color. There's depth because of the hallway behind her. Open bottle of red on the buffet. Definitely a 9. Oh dear. Now this one's a little bleak. Hostage video or interrogation room. I feel like I need to say to him, blink twice and we'll come save you. I'd say 3 out of 10, and that's only because a light is on in that room. Now here the background is in disarray and there's a lot of clutter going on. I mean, I like the mirror, but honestly, if it's in the background, have it reflect something interesting, not more clutter. Needs another lamp to balance out the light on his face. I like the yellow throw blanket. It works well with the blue in the couch and in his suit. I don't know, overall he has some really good color schemes going on here. Could probably use another key light. I'd say 6 out of 10. Now this one is well presented. It's well lit. Look at that manual typewriter. Old cameras, art. Very well done. 10 out of 10. Again, looks like a hostage room. The lighting is coming from overhead and it casts those dark shadows. Nothing going on in this room that's interesting. I'm wondering if he just emerged from that open closet back there. To be honest, this virtual setup just makes me sad. 2 out of 10. Now here we have a rock and roll setup. I like guitars, although might not be appropriate for corporate virtual meetings, but then again, you'd be memorable. Raise the camera, pull back to show more of that fantastic room. 7 out of 10. Now this guy is not doing himself any favors here. Boring. Leaves no impression. Unremarkable. Again, at least he has a light on. He's wearing a suit, but really boring. So 4 out of 10. Now here's my last room to rate. Nothing really special about this background would leave any wow impression on me, but it's well lit. It's in a corner. There's books and art and clean, so I'd give this room a solid 7. But I am adding 3 for that grandson in the Batman t-shirt, so 10 out of 10. Now, there's another piece of puzzle that can affect your overall presence, and that brings us to number 8, which is energy. This is a big one, and here's why. The camera lens has a way of making people seem like they have low energy. Now remember in the beginning when I said low presence equals low impact, high presence equals high impact? This means that whenever you're in front of a camera or a phone conference, you'll need to ramp up that energy so that you don't come across as having that low energy. And it doesn't stop there. You need to maintain that energy throughout that meeting if you desire to make a greater impact. Professional actors and speakers know how to bring up their energy before a presentation or a performance. They know that by doing so, they'll keep their audiences engaged. So how do we do this? I'm glad you asked. Here are a few techniques that professionals use. Before getting on that virtual call, drum your hands on a table for 10 to 20 seconds. The simple act of drumming is going to take your energy from a level 4 all the way up to a level 8. And your increased energy is going to come across as enthusiasm, excitement, and passion. And they're going to feel it. This energy can be very influential when you're wanting buy-in from decision makers. As any professional actor or speaker knows, if you want someone to feel something, you need to feel it first. Meaning, if you want the members in your virtual meeting to feel excited about the project that you're pitching, your energy needs to relay that to them beyond the words that you use. Now, as we learned earlier, motion creates emotion. So drumming is going to ramp up your energy, and this energy is going to enhance your executive presence. Project your voice for added gravitas. There will be times when you have to actively draw attention to yourself to increase your personal impact. You don't want mumbling to detract from your presence. This means sitting up straight, slowing down, and adding volume. When we use a weak or a monotone voice, we can come across as being subordinate or ineffective. Adding volume will not come naturally to most of you, and I know this from working with my own clients. It's something that needs to be practiced so that it becomes a part of who you are so that you can use it for that added gravitas and influence. This isn't yelling, but it does involve using your diaphragm when you speak to add that boost of power. That volume demonstrates confidence and assuredness. Volume, slowing down, and pausing, well, they're all leadership attributes, and using them imparts that impression on others. Now, we're nearing the end, so it's important not to leave out number 9, building rapport. Enough cannot be said about the importance of rapport in building your professional relationships. Rapport gets people to like you and trust you. Rapport helps us to find out what we have in common, and then we build relationships built on those commonalities. We often approach building rapport by way of asking questions. But how often have we asked questions of someone new only to find that conversation die on the floor? Questions don't always work, but there is something that does work. It's called matching. Matching is a way of practicing active listening and then matching their words in your replies. When you match their words using their vocabulary, it makes people feel like you get them. It makes people feel like you're in their head, you're on the same page, and that you understand them. Now, don't go overboard by repeating every word or phrase they use. Instead, think of matching as a spice that you sprinkle onto your conversations using their words to give that conversation added flavor. Making someone feel valued, seen, and heard, these are hallmarks of executive presence. Matching builds this rapport quickly. Now, my suggestion would be to practice matching in your low-level conversations with your friends and your family and your colleagues, and practice often so that when a high-level conversation comes into play, you already have this part down pat. Once you build the rapport, now you have the golden opportunity to shine that spotlight on yourself, which brings us to number 10, graceful self-promotion. I know people who dread promoting themselves. Mainly it's because they feel that their work should speak for itself, or they don't want to come across as bragging to their boss or colleagues, or it just makes them feel uncomfortable. I get it. And my response would be, that would explain why people who are less qualified than you are getting promoted into the positions that you want and deserve. By not marketing yourself, by deflecting or not claiming credit, It not only diminishes your own achievements, but it diminishes the visibility of the people you work with, your colleagues, partners, and senior leaders. And that impact will be highest when you're trying to move to that next level in your career. Because without promotion, something terrible happens. Nothing. Speaking up about what you contribute and detailing why you're qualified, it doesn't make you like an egotistical blowhard like the guy down the hall. And I'm sorry guys, it usually is a guy. On the contrary, done right, it sends a clear message that you're ready for new opportunities or a higher position. But this is even more important if you're working remotely, because if you're out of sight, there's potential for being out of mind. So let's put this into perspective. Self-promotion can get a bad rap because it can come across as bragging, but it does not have to be like that. In fact, self-promotion can be done gracefully and in a way that brings attention to the quality of your work without being viewed as obnoxious or self-serving. It's a tool, and you use it to help you reach that next level of success. Consider this. If you don't advertise to the right crowd, no one will know how great you are. If you don't find a way to speak about the value of what you're doing, you're sending a clear message that you don't put much value on it. And if you don't value it, why should anyone else? How's that for a truth bomb? Lastly, your boss has his or her own responsibilities to handle and simply can't see everything that's going on. When taking this into consideration, you're not bragging. You're simply keeping your boss and your teams informed. So where do you start? Number 1, use your casual conversations at work to share what you've accomplished, what you're working on, and then ask for ideas about how you can strengthen your skills and your position to better prepare for the opportunities ahead. Why does this work? Because this approach gives you the space to demonstrate your value and still come across as being humble and relatable. And by asking for their advice, you're building allies. Number 2, move the focus from yourself to the successful projects that you've recently been a part of. This not only provides updates at your team meetings, but it's going to give you the perfect opportunity to comment on the success of your projects. You'll likely come across as a team player, and your part in it's going to be completely known. Using these 2 methods of self-promotion will help keep you top of mind, and that is right where we want you, because you're more likely to come up in conversations where they're discussing opportunities, considering who to place on projects and who to advance. Perfecting your elevator pitch. I know I promised you 10, but I am adding in 1 more strategy because your elevator pitch is tied to self-promotion. So let me start by asking a question. Have you ever had an opportunity to talk about what you do and then said nothing? And then when that opportunity passed, you're like, why didn't I speak up? To avoid that from happening again and letting those golden opportunities slide by, try this. Knuckle down on your elevator pitch. We all know that we need one, but few actually have theirs ready. An elevator pitch gives you huge advantages in terms of visibility and positioning. Secondly, it sets you apart from your competition, and it enables you to make a case for yourself whenever an opportunity presents itself. An elevator pitch consists of 3 elements. What you do now, but it also emphasizes what you want to do in the future and why you're qualified to do it. Having your pitch ready to go shows that you're ambitious and that you're focused on something specific that you're working to achieve. It gives you an opportunity to talk about your skills or your background in a way that aligns with what could be useful to the organization now and in the future. And it provides you the opportunity to show that you're thoughtful, reflective, and can get to the point quickly. Don't underestimate the importance of that last point. Executives who are pressed for time view this as a strength. Once you have these 3 elements down, what you do, what you want to do in the future, and why you're qualified to do it, practice it out loud. Why is this so important? Because the moment you speak the words out loud, you're going to quickly discover that you're too wordy, too technical, you ramble on, you never get to the point, you have tons of filler words, all of which will detract from your executive presence. Go back to the drawing room and whittle it down. What you do now, what you want to do in the future, and why you're qualified to do it. Keep your elevator pitch as short and as simple as possible. Here's one of mine. And yes, you can have more than one elevator pitch. Just know who your audience is so that you can pitch to them effectively. I help business professionals make a powerful impression whenever they face a make or break moment or are in front of decision makers. Going forward, I want to take the media skills of executives to that next level. I worked for 16 years as a commercial actor, and I've been training news anchors for 5 of those years. Here's another. I work with political candidates in Minnesota, and I help them to make a powerful impression on the delegates and the voters. Going forward, I want to work with candidates across the country. I've been very successful helping my clients get voted into office. Both examples hit all the criteria: what I'm doing now, what I want to do, and why I'm qualified. Succinct, to the point, no rambling, no filler words. Done well, and it will pique the interest of whomever you're pitching to so that they want to know more, and it furthers the conversation. Consider your elevator pitch a movie trailer, and it's not the whole movie. Once you've revised your elevator pitch, now you may have gone through it 7, 8, 15 revisions. Memorize it. Practice it on your walks, while you're working out, driving to the grocery store, when you're cutting the grass or shoveling the snow. Being prepared will set you apart from the others. And I can't emphasize this enough, because your elevator pitch ensures that you are ready whenever that make or break moment presents itself. As I bring this to a close, remember this. Whether it's in the virtual world or in person, executive presence matters. All of the changes that we discussed today are small, but they will make a powerful impact on how you come across to others. Use these strategies and you'll be on your way to moving much closer to the success you long for. Wishing you much success. Thank you.